Right. So here we go. In terms of the format, because I'm obviously not on a stable connection, I'll just say hello. I'll stay on the meeting. Our Vice Chair, Councillor Foster, will chair this panel in practical terms. And as I said, I want to say hello. Let's just run through the starting slides to ensure that we have received apologies for everybody not attending.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So are there apologies, Harry, which we should record?
None received from panel members, but I can see that not everyone is present at the moment. I'll monitor that throughout the meeting, and if anyone doesn't attend, I will mark them as having received their apologies.
Okay, no, thank you. Let's move to the next slide, please. So affected interest and disclosable interest. Anybody has one right now, please declare.
I don't know if I should declare this or not. You can tell me if it's relevant, but I am an ABRI tenant.
I would declare that. That seems a sensible thing to do. It's out in the open then.
Okay, then I declare it.
And me too. That's Janet Cochran. I'm an ABRI tenant.
Thank you.
Excellent. An ABRI tenant.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think we've got that out.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Harry. Okay, at this point, I'll hand over to Mike. No, Mike, thank you very much for sharing this. And again, apologies that I can't be here as present as I would like to be. So I'll stay in the meeting, of course.
Brilliant. Okay, so you can all see at the bottom of the screen the overall intent for this particular session, this particular panel. Is Bracknell Forest delivering an effective social affordable housing system which meets demand in the borough? We've looked at it across 3 modules, and the final part is bringing all the recommendations together. This is module 1, and it's a chance to look at the effectiveness of the current system. And system, I don't mean by application as in IT, I mean the total people, process, technology of the system that we employ to manage social and affordable housing provision in Bracknell Forest. Any questions before we jump in about the structure? Brilliant. Okay, next slide, Harry. Okay, right, let's kick off with module 1. I'm hoping that you've been able to read the links that Harry sent out. There were 3. One of them is the allocations policy, one of them was the housing strategy, and the other one was the homeless strategy. That was correct. I have named them correctly, I hope, Harry.
You have homelessness and rough sleeping strategy.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. So let's next slide.
So this is the beginning of the officer presentation.
Oh, right, brilliant. So it's Brian, isn't it, that's doing it? Is that right?
Brian and Ian, yeah.
Okay. Brian, do you want to crack on?
No problem at all. Good evening, Chair and members. If Harry, I'm going to have to ask you to do the fellow that used to do them in Downing Street. I've lost his name for the life of me. Chris Whitty, was it? Anyway, we'll move on swiftly. So if you could move on, Harry, to the first slide, please. Okay. So it's quite a broad remit in terms of looking at the effectiveness of social housing in Bracknell Forest. So what Ian and I have tried to do, so I'm going to do the presentation. Ian's going to be there for questions alongside myself on this one. What we've tried to do is we'll give you a bit of an overview of how things work. So apologies if you know a lot of this, but we didn't know where to start or what to cover. So if we cover as much as possible, we can give you a broad range of the social housing role in Bracknell Forest. So to start off with, we decided that we'll give you a bit of an overview of what do we do? So what's the council's role in social housing? So as it says on there, I'm not going to read through everything on there unless you would like me to, and to go into any detail. But we've got, formally, we have the strategic housing role. So we've got to identify the future need for housing, including affordable housing. So we need to keep an eye on what's the demand and how we're meeting that demand. Then that gets involved with planning. So planning develop the local plan, which I'm sure you're all aware of, which includes policies to meet the affordable housing need. The enabling role, that's where the bit about the strategic housing role comes into effect. So Ian is our enabling officer or enabling manager. So Ian will work with developers and registered providers. So RP is a registered provider of housing to deliver new homes that meets those housing needs that we've identified. So then there's the enforcement role. Now, this is not the housing services role. The enforcement role is the public protection partnership. They enforce standards in rented accommodation. So if you've got constituents that have got damp and mould in their property or issues with disrepair, colleagues in the public protection partnership, they'll take enforcement action on that landlord if it's a rented property to be able to deal with it. We have the legal duties. We have a duty to maintain a housing register, which is also known as a housing list. We have an allocations policy, which you've read, the homeless strategy, which no doubt you've read, and our homelessness duties. Again, I said I wouldn't read it out, but I'm turning out I'm doing that. So we have a right to nominate people to the registered provider properties. So because the council doesn't own its own housing stock, we then rely upon the registered providers. They let us know when they've got a property to advertise. We advertise it on the system. A customer will put a bid in terms of they'll express interest in that property on our system, and there's more on that later. And the system will shortlist the person with the highest housing need and the longest wait. That's how it's supposed to work. So finally, we've got funding and land assets. So we've got potential. So the council has some community sum payments, and I can go into that in more detail if you wish. And we've got potentially there is council land that can be developed to deliver additional affordable housing. So there's a little bit more to that, really. So the community sum, where you've got a development, the planning policy will require the developer to provide a percentage of affordable housing on that site. In some cases, it may not be appropriate for us to take affordable housing on that site because, a good example we tend to use would be if they're putting 5-bedroom executive homes with double garages on there, to have some of those as affordable housing maybe would be lovely to have, but for a housing association to purchase that off the developer, they wouldn't be able to justify the cost of that. They wouldn't get their money back in the rent they would have to charge for it, or a person wouldn't be able to afford the rent they could charge for it. So in that case, we would potentially look at a commuted sum. The developer would pay a sum of money to the council, which has to be ring fenced for use for affordable housing, delivery of additional affordable housing. It's a little bit complicated, but I can go into that in a bit more detail in due course. So Harry, can I ask you to move on to the next slide, please? Right, so the RPs, registered providers, as I said, they own and manage all the housing stock here. And as you know, ABRI own the majority of stock here. I think they're getting close to 7,000 properties here. The registered providers, they provide new affordable housing as agreed with developers. So when you've got a development site, the affordable housing that has to be provided as per the planning agreement, a registered provider has to take that on. So they make those properties available to a registered provider, and a registered provider will make them an offer. So they may have more than, they're likely to have several registered providers put an expression of interest, or they'll make a bid for a financial bid for those units to be able to take them on for themselves. Registered providers can deliver additional social housing themselves in partnership with the developers, or they can develop themselves. So ABRI, I'm sure you may be aware, have their own development arm where they develop sites to deliver social housing. Registered providers can also apply for a grant from Homes England, which is the body that manages the social housing grant to help fund new affordable housing. So they give the grant. You would have heard the government fairly recently announced some additional, quite a lot of money to deliver additional affordable housing in England. Homes England will help to deliver that via a grant to the registered providers. And again, they advertise and let properties on the choice-based letting system. There's more on that later. And they also do low-cost home ownership schemes, so shared ownership schemes. They do intermediate rented properties. There's a range of low-cost home ownership schemes they will do under the umbrella of affordable housing. Harry? So again, the government's role in social housing. So I promise I won't read through all of these. They set the legal framework. They set housing targets for the country and for local authorities. They set the national planning policies and guidance, so the affordable housing thresholds and viability. They provide grant funding, and they set the regulatory framework in which the registered providers and councils develop affordable housing. As examples there, rent increases, regulatory oversight, financial rules, and a lot of those are done by the regulator of social housing, which is a Quango. Happy to move on, Harry? If I'm going too fast, please stop me and then bring me back. As I said, I'm conscious that this is what we do, so I can whistle stop through it. But for those that are not involved in social housing, there's quite a lot to take in. So I'm quite happy to stop and go back at any stage. So to move on, though, developers' roles. So developers, they acquire and develop land to build new market housing in simple terms, and they use private finance to do it. As we said earlier, they must meet planning policy requirement, depending on the size of the development, of course, to provide affordable housing on their sites. And that's, as it says on the slide there, it's legally enforced through Section 106 agreements. They may use financial viability arguments to reduce or limit the obligation to provide affordable housing. So Ian and I have heard this on more occasions in different local authorities, not just Bracknell, where a developer will be providing a very large site and they say, we're not making enough money, it's not viable for me to deliver that site, to deliver affordable housing on that site. It's actually going to cost me money, so we can't deliver affordable housing. And at that point, there'll be a negotiation with the planning team about what they can provide, whether they meet that requirement or whether that requirement is foregone. Moving on, developers can enter partnerships with joint ventures with registered providers and councils to deliver additional affordable housing. So there's a lot of interaction between registered providers, developers, and with local authorities in terms of the delivery of social housing. Harry, again. So the key points. I'll let you read those for yourselves. I'll give you a minute. I'll just cover actually social rent and affordable rent. You may have heard the term social rent and you may have heard the term affordable rent. Social rent is what's also known as, or used to be known as, council house rents. So this is a rent set by a formula by central government, and basically it's the lowest rent you can have in terms of the social rented system. Affordable rents are defined as up to 80% of the market rent for that area. So if you're in an area of high demand and you've got an affordable rented product, theoretically you can set your rent very high, as we have seen recently with some developments. But that is under the definition of affordable rents compared to social rents. So social rents is the preferred rent model, and the government are moving much towards that. And social rent, which was in the wilderness for a few years, has now come back, and it's come back with a bit of a vengeance, and hopefully more developments will be let at social rent levels. The council has a right to nominate to registered providers to properties when they're let. So again, if you've got a planning agreement, Section 106 agreement, in that agreement, there'll be a requirement for a nominations agreement for the council to nominate clients from our waiting list to those empty properties. Normally it's 100% of first lettings, so every property on the first time when they're built and ready to let, council can nominate to all of them. Thereafter, it's usually 75% of those lets. The remaining 25% is allowed for the housing association or registered provider, to be able to do management transfers. So if they've got a customer they need to move for their own purposes, they can use that stock. In reality, the vast majority tend to give us close to 100% of those lets. Not always, but that's kind of the rule of thumb. As it says on here, we're reliant upon registered providers and developers to deliver new affordable housing, and we've got limited control over where and how this is built. I'll leave it there. So, Harry, if you're happy to move on.
Just a quick one, Brian.
Of course, yeah, fire away,
registered
please.
Providers, are they all not-for-profit?
They should be. So they would be. There are some for-profit advisors actually now. It's there's a small number that are for-profit registered providers. Ian, I might ask you to jump in and help out on that particular question.
Yeah, there's multiple terms, but the term housing association denotes what we call not-for-profit registered providers. A few years back, the Housing and Regeneration Act allowed what's now called for-profit registered providers to own and manage affordable housing in the same way as not-for-profit RPs.
Thank you. Okay. So this slide hopefully gives you a breakdown. We wanted to show you what the sort of, this is the whole housing stock in Bracknell. So as you can see, it's quite straightforward. There's the vast majority is either owned outright or owned with a mortgage, and only 15% of the stock, the housing stock in the borough, is social rent on there. But we're putting that as socially rented as opposed to social rent or affordable rent, just to give that definition. There's just under 8,000 social and rented and affordable rented homes in the borough, and of that 16% private rented, which is quite a small percentage compared to other areas. So that just gives you a flavour of what the stock is. And if you move on, Harry, we can show you what the stock is, how that social housing stock is made up. So the pie chart on the left, that is where you can see that the majority of the properties are terraced or flats and masonettes. So we've got a large number. Semi-detached is only, what's that, just under a fifth or just over a fifth of properties, and there's only 2% of detached properties. So the vast majority are terraces or flats. Broken down further, you can see then what the makeup of the stock is. So, what's that, 60% of the stock is 1 or 2 bedroom units, 33% 3 bedroom, only 4% is 4 bedrooms, and we come on to that later when it comes to demand.
Do you separate like bungalows? Because that's one of the big bugbears I have in the north of Ascot.
No, we haven't on for this purpose. We haven't broken it down. It's literally just per bedroom size, so we haven't broken it down further.
Okay. I'll take it as that. Thank you.
Okay, Harry, if you can move on, please. So again, I've got a few slides here. I'm sorry to sort of, to keep putting PowerPoint slides up, which are quite sort of, focused on numbers. But what we wanted to do here was to give you a flavour of how many new affordable and social rented homes have been delivered. This is via the planning system. So these are new build homes. So we've gone back, we've got figures for the last 6 years. And as you can see, we've had 419 homes new build delivered in 6 years that are socially rented. As you can see, we've only got 2 4-bedrooms out of that in that whole period. Or sorry, 1 4-bedroom rather in the whole 6 year period. And you can see the vast majority, I think it's 90% have been 1 or 2 bedrooms. So it just shows you this is what we're dealing with at the moment. So if Harry, if I can move on.
Right,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
So in terms of that's obviously increasing the supply. Is it negated by the fact that under things like right to buy schemes? So while that increases the number coming in, is there a debit to the equation?
There will be a debit. We did have some figures from January where Ian and I responded to an inquiry about the number of homes that are lost from rent to right to buy. I think, Ian, from memory, that it was broadly, I think it was it positive, Ian? I can't remember.
It's certainly positive. It's a net increase.
Net gain,
The main reasons we lost properties were, one, as you say, through right to buy, although not a huge number. And secondly, there was one estate in particular that was owned by L&Q that they sold off due to structural problems, and that accounted for the loss of about 110 homes.
That was Wayland Close. Okay. So again, if I move on to the next slide, you'll see the number of homes that have been available to let. That will include those new builds. So it's not, don't want to double count here, but you can see these are properties that have been let through the choice-based letting system or the housing register since 2020. I've put an average on the end, so it just gives you a bit of a flavour for where we are. But again, you can see the vast majority of homes that have been let have been one bedrooms. I've included studios in there, 2-bedroom homes with a much less number of 3 bedrooms, and certainly a very, very few 4-bedroom homes coming forward. We've got sheltered homes on there as well. That's properties for, I say for older people, but not being far off 55 myself. It's for people, technically people over the age of 55, but I think that's now been increased to 60. But those properties are separate to the general needs homes. Okay, if you can move on, Harry, we'll give you a flavour of the demand. Now, so this, we've got we've given you a slide of how many households were on the housing register before we switched over. So this was on the 1st of April. Now this is going to come down because we are still working through the applications under the new policy. So while the new policy would give you an incorrect picture of where we are until we've caught up with the number of people that have applied, and reapplied to the register. But you can see on there that this will be, it won't be too different to where we are now. But you can see we've got, what's that, 629 households seeking 1 bedrooms, 281 households seeking 2, 338 for 3 bedrooms, 163 for 4s, and 5 and 6 bedrooms, which we simply don't get. But bear in mind, this policy was where people, these numbers are based on the maximum people could apply for. So we've revised that by revising the housing allocations policy to going to what's known as the bedroom standard. So people can now only apply for properties that meets their need rather than a want. To give you an example, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah. Can I just ask, with regards to the 5 and 6, it's just a clarification, so when I'm going through the rest of it, do we regard these as family homes or HMOs?
Family homes. So these are for
families.
families.
So it would not have the HMO put to it, because 5 and 6 bedroom, I mean, how many children or how many,
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So, we don't have any, Dot, so it's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
With council, there's
no baby doll. I just got rid of 2 before coming here. We had to walk one down to the Brownies, excuse the thing, and the other one was here with me all day. Thank you very much.
So I think we were talking about the number of 6 and 5 bedroom homes. They simply don't exist in social housing. There is the odd 5 bedroom, but they're very, very few and far between. But where the policy has changed is, so if you have 2 children of the same gender, they would be expected to share a bedroom. Whereas under the old policy, if you had 2 children of the same gender, you could apply, and those were your only children, you could apply for a 3 bedroom. So you could be housed in a 3 bedroom, which we were facing. So we were losing a lot of homes to people that were technically under occupying them in that respect. So by tightening up the policy and going to the government bedroom standard, which most local authorities have been using for years, it means we're more able to meet the specific need of people, and we're making better use of our housing stock. So this would change. So I would expect very few households to be on the 5 or 6 bedroom list, and the 4 bedroom list to certainly to go down quite significantly. The 2 bedroom list I'd expect to go up, possibly the 3 bedroom, but the 1 bedroom list will probably stay about the same. So if we can move on, Harry, if that's okay. So the housing register, so we just want to give you a small flavour. Who is eligible to join the housing register? We've talked about the housing register and nominating people, so who can go on it? So at the moment, in order to go onto the housing register, you need to have lived continuously in Bracknell Forest for the last 2 years prior to your application. There are other criteria in terms of eligibility, such as if you've got no status in the UK, you can't apply. You need to be eligible for public funds. You need to have a legal right to live in the UK. So if you haven't got those, you can't apply. That's by law.
Just to be clear on that, Brian, because that was something that people have raised rather unhelpfully.
Yeah.
If you're a an asylum seeker, the
Mhm.
law as it stands says,
You can't join.
okay.
But
Okay.
just to, I
I
can
thought that was
clarify.
clear. Yeah,
It
in
is,
the document.
I believe so. I said, but I think I know what you're referring to. There are some, there's been some comments on social media around this, and I can cover that one if you like. So
Please.
people that are currently seeking asylum, so people that have no status in the UK, cannot join the housing register. Once a person's asylum is granted, if they are granted asylum in the UK, they still haven't got a 2-year connection to the borough. However, under homelessness legislation, which is separate, homeless legislation means that if anybody can apply to any local authority they like, doesn't mean to say they'll get housed by that local authority, but the local authority has to provide, has to allow them to go on while they're under investigation for that homeless duty. And this is where there was some concern, I think, raised, because we've said people that are in the migration hotel aren't able to join the register because they haven't lived here for 2 years. And then there was further clarity sought. We said, well, because somebody pointed out, well, if they were homeless, they could. And so if they were homeless and whilst they're under a homeless duty, they could, yes, join the housing register. But households that are not homeless can't join. So while they're trying not to get too complicated about it. So there are 2 aspects of a homeless duty, or 3 aspects actually. There is what's called a prevent duty. A prevent duty is if someone is formally faced with homelessness within 56 days. So if you've been served notice by your landlord, or you've been evicted by a family member and you're under notice, that 56-day period, within that 56-day period, what's known as a homeless prevention duty, a statutory duty, is enacted. Whilst you're under that statutory 56-day period, you can join the council, any council's waiting list in the UK. You can do it. You're not going to get housed in 56 days, and the officer will take 56 days to a maximum or a minimum of 56 days to make inquiries to prevent that person from becoming homeless. So whilst they can join the housing register, they go into a band E on that register while they're under that prevent duty, if they have no local connection to the area. So they're never going to get housed as a result of it. But there is a statutory legal duty for us to accept them on there whilst that prevent duty is in place. If at the end of those 56 days that household or person is unable to be prevented from becoming homeless and they become homeless, that then transforms to what's known as the homeless relief duty, which is again a further 56 days in which an officer has time to relieve that household or that person's homelessness. While they're under a relief duty, regardless of local connection, they can remain on or join the housing register in Band E if they have no local connection. But again, they won't be housed in a further 56 days because the average waiting time is a lot longer than 112 days. If at the end of the 112 days they haven't they've had their homelessness relieved, then they come off the housing register because there's no further duty. If they remain homeless at the end of that 56 days, the officer has to make a decision as to whether or not they've become homeless intentionally. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, or unintentionally homeless, and if there is a homeless duty owed towards them. If there is a homeless duty owed towards them and they have no local connection to this area, they are referred to the area in which they have a connection. If they do not have a connection anywhere else, then they are free to remain on the housing register and they'll go on to a Band C. And that's where the confusions come in, because people are saying, well, if a migrant or an asylum seeker, once they have a duty, if they were to become homeless, but there's a lot of hurdles for a person to get over before they become eligible to join the housing register. But that is a statutory definition. We have to allow homeless households, we have to give priority on the housing register, and those that are under a duty, we have to allow them on the register. That's not a Bracknell Council policy, that is a national government criteria. Hopefully does that cover that one for everybody?
Thank
Okay,
you.
sorry to labour the point, but said it's quite frustrating to read a lot of these bits and pieces, as I'm sure it is for members. So there, I said there are exceptions to this criteria. For example, armed forces personnel. So if you're a former forces personnel, you don't need a local connection anywhere. We've removed that. You know, if you want to come and live in Bracknell and you've been you're in the forces, or your family, you can join the register. We would disregard that local connection criteria for you. Homeless households, as I said, we've covered that one, owed a homeless duty. There are a few others, but they're outlined in the policy itself. And an applicant will also need to have an identified housing need. Just because you fancy going onto the housing list and being allocated a social housing property doesn't mean you can do. You need to have an identified housing need to be able to join. And as we said, currently the re-registration of applicants is still underway, so the picture of demand is still unclear yet. So we're going to get there. We're working on it, and we'll be able to, to clear that backlog as quickly as possible, so we can know where we are and we can begin to help people. Harry, happy to move on. So again, I think I've covered a lot of these. So the demand for housing, affordable housing, I'm sure all members know, is significantly higher than the current supply. 3 and 4 bedroom homes have the lowest supply and the longest waiting times. So we're looking at 5 years plus for 3 and 4 bedroom homes. However, to try to offset that, we've got an additional 89 homes are forecast to be delivered through development this year, and that's including 27 3-bedroom homes, which is a significant number, and 11 4-bedroom homes, which again, compared to what we've had over the past few years, are due to be delivered. But as you know, we've also got competing demands for the 1-bedrooms. So we have young people leaving home. We have people, care leavers that we're looking to try to prioritise to get them assisted. People that wish to downsize from large family homes, we've prioritised them on the register. People that have got disabilities and medical needs. So there's a broad spectrum of people that are requiring rehousing. So the demand is not simply for the large family homes, it's across the piece. But at the moment, it's particularly acute for the 3 and 4 bedrooms. And finally, the affordability at homes is an issue. So as I touched on earlier, up to 80% of market rents is an issue. So there was a number of new build developments that were released recently by colleagues in Adbury, and they were charging quite significantly high rents, which is a matter that members have asked us to take up, and members have taken up themselves with Adbury, which is we're still discussing with them at the moment. So I'm happy to move on, Harry. So again, I'm sorry to keep going on. As said, with the presentation, we're nearly finished. So one of the other areas you wanted to look at was communication with customers. So again, the way customers can communicate with us, they've got several methods. So they can communicate. We've got a micro site, which is the Bracknell My Choice site, which is where people can register can apply to join the housing register. It's also where properties are advertised and they can express interest on them, and we can put information on there for them. Customers can use, we've got a free personalised and tailored housing advice tool online, which is excellent. What it would do is a person will put in their own specific circumstances, and the system is intelligent enough to be able to give them a range of options to be able to help them. So it's sort of, it's taking us forward to the 21st century where people are able to self-serve as much as possible, where they don't need us. So where they're happy to get information and find it, the Advice Aid tool will be able to help. Customers can speak to officers on the telephone, they can contact the housing register via the address that's on there, or they can contact us at Times Square and via colleagues in the hub. Okay, Harry. Thank you. Again, I just wanted to give you just it's not the best, but this is an example of the Bucks. So I used to work in Bucks 4 or 5 years ago. It's hard to get it out of my head. So it's BFC, so Bracknell My Choice. So this is an example of the website. So it just gives you a small look at this is what you can see. But you're more than happy to. I'm sure if you were to Google BFC My Choice, it would bring up the page for you, and you'd be able to see a better look at that one. Harry, can you move on to the next one? So I don't think the pictures come up here. I don't need to press again, Harry. Oh, there you go. This would give you just an example of how properties are advertised. So you can see here, this is an old one. It was a 2-bedroom house in Binfield at the top. It's got the property, not the actual road number, but the road it's on, how much the rent is, when does the advert close, what type of property it's social housing, who the landlord is, and this one it describes 2-bedroom, 4-person, end of terrace house with garden, gas central heating. So people can see it and say, well, would I be interested in moving to that property? I'm going to say yes, I'm happy to put a bid for that property, and the same for the property below. Mostly we try to put pictures on with them, but in some cases we haven't got them, so it'll just be the logo, as you can see in the second advert on there. If you want to move on, Harry. Communication with partners. So we regularly speak to our partners. So we speak with ABRI because they're the main housing association here on a regular basis. I think I'm meeting them again on Friday. We have housing and homeless forums with registered providers and partner agencies. So because we're dealing with homeless households, we're dealing with Pilgrim Hearts, other agencies, they come along and we have a discussion about how we can best meet our needs or the needs of our customers and the community. We have regular meetings with Homes England and with colleagues from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. So that can be with regards to development, rough sleeping, homelessness, the broad range. And we have regular discussions and meetings with planning colleagues and developers. And information is available to developers on the council's website. So there is a link on the page which will take you to quite a detailed breakdown of what the affordable housing needs are in Bracknell Forest. And Ian updates that. Is it once a year, Ian, that's updated?
Yeah, correct.
Thank you. Sorry, put you on the spot.
Just a quick question. So ABRI actually have some legacy property responsibilities. I'll give an example. The path going to the library in Sandhurst is an ABRI responsibility. They have roads responsibility. In fact, it's all these other things which are clearly not social housing because it's a road, it's a path, it's all those other parts of the legacy of the social housing estate. Who looks after and engages ABRI and those other RPs in that for those areas?
So it'll be the relevant department. So it'll be either highways, if it's the roads, it will be parks and community services. So there'll be the various different agencies, but I know there has been discussion about some of the paths and some of the work that on some of the land that ABRI have with colleagues. So I don't know exactly which departments are looking after them, but the council do have regular interactions with the relevant officers to ensure they're doing what they need to do.
I guess what it is that the relationship with the RPs is broader than just.
Oh yes, 100%.
Yeah. Than social and affordable housing. You know, there's all sorts of other pitfalls. Okay.
Thank you. I think that may be the last slide, Harry. Oh, sorry, the main focus of activity going forward. So yes, sorry. So this is where we want to just to say what we're doing. So we need to meet the shortfall in larger social homes. We need to encourage and support RPs to deliver additional grant-funded affordable housing. I'll come on to that. Ensure that registered providers and developers understand and meet our local housing priorities. You can see what we're trying to do is, as you can see on the list, on the with the numbers, we've got an issue with 3 and 4 bedroom homes at the moment. We've got lots of people that are needing them and people that are living in very overcrowded and very challenging conditions that are desperate need of those homes. So planning can only do so much. So what we're trying to do is to look at different ways in which we can make best use of our stock and the best ways we can utilize the funds and the options that are available to us. So one of the initiatives that we're working on and we've been working on is to encourage people that are living in under-occupied homes, because some of the properties that we've got cases where people have been living them since the 70s, and I think in one case since the 60s, in a 4-bedroom home on their own. We're not trying to move that person out against their will. We couldn't if we wanted to, but we're trying to encourage them to move to a smaller property that may be better suited for their needs, where they're much more comfortable. Some people are very willing to do so. Some people are not so willing, and some people just are not aware they can do so. So we're trying to work with people to increase that, because that will help us without developing or purchasing any new units. People will gradually be moving to somewhere where they're better. I've been doing this for a number of years, and I can honestly say every person that we've downsized into a property has always said, this is the best thing I've ever done. I wish I'd done this years ago. But that's one part of it. 1 second, Councillor, if you don't mind, if I just say the last part is we've also we've got, we're discussing with the Cabinet member currently about using some of the Section 106 commuted sum funds that we've got to be able to grant fund a housing association for them to go out and purchase some 3 and 4 bedroom homes. So the idea would be that we get we use some of the grants, the commuted sum that we've got, which again can only be used for affordable housing, to work in partnership with a housing association. They go out and purchase 3 and 4 bedroom homes off the market. which are then, we provide a grant, so a percentage of that cost of that home to the housing association, and in return we get the ability to nominate, to place clients in that property with the housing association in perpetuity. So we get the right to access it, housing association own and manage it. We just get the ability to put our clients in there, which is Ian and I have done before in different authorities, and we believe that is a system that will work. So we're talking to the cabinet member and hoping to take that one further forward. I'm sorry to not to have answered your question, Councillor Hayes.
You actually brought up one of the questions I was going to ask, and I'm really pleased you did. The stock that I have, or the stock that is in the North Parish area of mine, is old stock, and it is houses that are good sized houses, 3 bedrooms, and I have quite a few older persons living on their own. You hit right on what I'm concerned about. And one of the things I'd asked Avery at one of the last meetings is, could they supply us with the houses that they have in each ward individually, so that we are aware? Because I'm excuse the expression, walking the streets on Friday, round just one area alone, where I have got 4 problems, and they're all now, as I've checked into the residents that have rung me or contacted me about the problems, and they vary, they have all been the ones, Avery houses. And had I known that, not just a resident or neighbours next door, and these are the sort of things I do think we should be allowed to, because we can assist more then.
Absolutely. So the project that we have is that we're happy to, we've got a small budget, so we're happy to encourage and to those people that are willing to downsize. The new policy gives people priority band A, so it's gone up from band B before, so which basically means they can get what they want in terms of they can wait for the ideal property to come up. We're offering currently to pay for removals for people to move all their, to pack and unpack their belongings, because we know the removals can be a real concern and a challenge for lots of people. And we've done, in the number of cases we've done so far, we've been able to put carpets down into the bungalows they've moved to, so to make it a really pleasant experience for that person, that they don't have to worry about the moving, they don't have to worry about going into a property with bare floors. It's all done for them. And we've done rubbish clearance for people as well. So we're quite flexible in how we can get people to move. So it's, if you have clients, customers or constituents, sorry, that are willing to or interested, even just want to talk about it and find out a bit more, please
I
drop
will
me a
be
line.
back. I will be back to you after Friday. Believe me, young man.
I'll be happy to do my best sales pitch to them.
So
thank
Dorothy
you.
will be back. That's excellent. Right, how many more slides we got, Harry?
I think that's the last one, actually.
May I please? I did have my hand up.
Sorry.
It's all right. Nice to see you, Brian.
Oh, sorry, is it you, Tina? Sorry.
Yeah, it is. Thanks very much for the presentation. Can I just ask, from where has the 106 money been scraped from?
Yeah, it's a number of different sites, really. So there was, I may need to ask Ian to come in and confirm. So I think there was, I've got a breakdown somewhere.
So is the question, are you asking generally where it comes from, or what specific sites it comes from?
So what I'm saying, yeah, what sites have been raped and pillaged for the 106? Sorry, that's the way a number of us councillors look at it, that we have developments in our wards and the money doesn't come to the ward, it goes somewhere else, and we have been impacted. So where has that 106 money come from?
The largest chunk of it has come from the town centre. The reason for that is that town centre developments are often high density, sometimes high rise. And due to all the recent concerns around building safety, fire safety and increased regulation, what happened since those schemes commenced is that the registered providers don't particularly want to take on those units and take on all the liabilities around high-rise living. And we found it impossible to get a registered provider to take the affordable housing, and hence sought a commuted sum payment instead from the developer.
So what you're saying is that, like that huge block of flats in town centre, I mean, that's massive. Are how many of those units have been purchased, and how many are rented?
Oh, well, it depends which one you're referring to, because
The
there's several.
huge one.
The one that's partially
biggest
built,
one.
you mean?
Is it? Are you talking about the one in Market Street?
Yeah, yeah. When
The
you
one
come
just
up
down from Times Square.
yeah, the one you come up the 329M, there you see this pink and white blob. Yes.
Under construction.
Yeah,
No,
I think
it's pretty
oh,
much done, I think. But anyway, it's massive.
Is that something?
So if I turn right into Market Street, this building will be on my left.
Is that something we can come back to, just so we can be
Of course you
clear we're
can. Yeah,
answering the
yeah.
right
But
question?
it's a point though, Mike. Let's not forget it, shall we? Because
No,
if
no, it's a
we've
fair
got
point.
massive blocks of flats which are not occupied, they should be used.
Yeah, no, couldn't disagree at all. Absolutely. I just think the team are having trouble identifying exactly
Where it is. Yeah.
Brian, do you want to answer in that
yeah,
one?
I think so. So
Before
there's
Trish comes in?
there's several developments. So you've got Amber House, which is right at the back of Times Square. So you'll see it from the car park. Amber House, there was a large number of affordable housing units in there, and we managed to get quite a large number. As I said, to repeat myself, sorry, we've got loads of households nominated to that property, and that was with Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing. So that one certainly. I think you're referring to the one on Market Street, Ian, and I think that's where we took a commuted sum.
Well, there's the Grand Exchange, which sits behind Times Square.
Yeah,
which is where we took.
Yeah, that wasn't actually the one I was thinking of. Not the Exchange. That's behind the borough. It's behind Times Square.
Okay.
We'll come back to you on that one if that's okay.
Would you?
Tricia,
That'd be grand. Thanks, Brian. You're a star.
Tricia, you got a question?
Yes, sorry. Sorry for the abrupt question in the chat, but how does right to buy affect all this? Because that could be significant. Please.
Ian?
Well, right to buy essentially applies to council housing, but there is something called preserved right to buy that applies to tenants who were tenants when the stock that was transferred to Silver Homes, Bracknell Forest Homes, and Silver Homes, now Adbury. So former tenants have that preserved right to buy. And in addition to that, something called right to acquire that applies to housing association properties. In terms of the numbers, I was just saying earlier, it hasn't been awfully high. Because we don't own our own stock, we've not been subject to the levels of right to buy that have been sort of prevalent elsewhere. The number that have gone through right to acquire is also small, and that is because the levels of discount offered through that scheme are much smaller than right to buy.
Okay. So just moving forward, any more questions for Brian and Ian at this point? Yep. Yeah. Jodie, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So how? I mean, obviously, I'm an admin tenant, so I once every year or so I will get some kind of anonymous feedback question, and it's usually about repairs. And I see the hub that I get an email for every now and again. Is that working? And if so, would you consider increasing the number of meetings that you have there?
So you said about you get feedback from Adbury, or questions asking for your feedback about Adbury. I didn't quite catch the last part of the question, sorry.
It was the latter.
Yes.
So Jodie was asking about she gets a questionnaire from Adbury about their performance.
Yeah, okay. Is that working? I don't know. We don't get that. We don't get specific. We don't govern ABRI, so ABRI are subject to the regulator of social housing. So all housing associations have to, by the regulator, have to do a tenant satisfaction survey every year. So they have to do that. So that's not a Bracknell Forest requirement. They don't necessarily share that information with us. It's available on, or the results should be available online. But I couldn't tell you if that's working or not, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
No,
Janet?
I thought they might have mentioned something.
Sorry.
Okay, one more question. So with the rules about the housing, so assume somebody is over 18 and has lived in Bracknell their whole life. Can they apply for housing merely because they can't afford private housing?
Well, it depends on their circumstances. So if they're living with their parents, yes, they can. So if they're living in a parental home, they can apply to join the register, and we're happy to accept them on there. But it depends on what their circumstances at the parental home. If they've got their own room, I'd need to look at the specifics of the policy. But generally speaking, somebody living at home, it's not a long-term solution for them. They can apply to join. Whereabouts they are in terms of priority is that it would depend greatly on the circumstances of that home.
I'm very pleased to hear that. I have many kids that I want to get rid of one day.
Yeah, they don't go.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Janet?
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
I'm just laughing at
Follow-up
Jodie's
questions
comment there.
Okay.
Yeah, are there any other housing associations that have properties in Bracknell?
Yes.
And could they be sort of accessed by going on the council list?
Yes.
Please?
So
Yes.
ABRI is not the only provider. So there are, I think it's over 20 providers at least that are operating in Bracknell. So there's a number that we've got just by name. Housing Solutions have got quite a bit of stock here. Metropolitan Thames Valley, they've got Amber House behind and a number of other units. L&Q used to have stock here, but they're in the process of transferring some of their stock to Housing Solutions, who are a very good housing association, as are Metropolitan Thames Valley. There's Home Group, there's a number, but all of them, where we've got nomination rights to their properties, they're advertised on our system. Southern Housing Group or another. So it's not just ABRI, so we're not totally reliant on ABRI, but because they've got the majority of the housing stock here, it just happens most of our properties that are available are through ABRI.
That's great. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet, sorry, Jenny, you've got a question.
Yeah, it was if a housing association has sorry. Turn it up. Sorry. If a housing association has empty properties, are they obliged to advertise it on just your site, or can they advertise it elsewhere?
It depends. So if we've got nomination rights to that property, which we have for the majority, they will be for 75% of their relets, they would have to let it through us. So if it's a property that's been relet as before, they would be obliged to let it to us if it's within that 75% of the relets that we have with them. So it depends on the detail of the nomination agreement we have. So majority, as I said, would be 75%. If it's not within that 75%, they could use it for within their own purposes for a management transfer, so within their own stock. So they could have someone in a different area they need to move, so they may move them into that property if we haven't got nomination rights. And that's the same for ABRI.
Right, thank you.
Okie dokie. Right, all questions answered on that one. Do you want to just move us forward? We had a registered providers review in 2021, and there were a whole series of recommendations which were approved, and it makes sense to now review where those recommendations got to. Were they enacted? Do we think those recommendations are still required? And if so, what comments or actions do we want from that? So, Harry, do you want to just take us forward, and we'll start going through those, and we can ask Brian and Ian any questions as we go. Tina, I believe you were on the panel back in the day, correct? I'll take that as a yes. Give us a wave when you come back, Tina. Right.
No, I did. Sorry, I pressed the wrong blooming thing. I've got two laptops going. Yeah, I was. So it'd be interesting to review that document and how far our recommendations have actually been picked up.
Okay, hopefully you can see here recommendation 1. This was about development training that supports strong community leadership for residents in social housing, including the governance of registered providers and the role of environmental health and investigating hazards and enforcing statutory checks. Training to be delivered by December 2021. So this was cancelled mainly because of COVID, and the view that the officers gave us here was that there are regular meetings with ABRI. RPs are governed by the regulator of social housing and environmental health, enforce standards in private rented accommodation via the shared service public protection partnership. Is there a rationale?
We didn't have ABRI in those days. It was just silver that were our main thrust. Thames Valley Metropolitan, they were our main thrust as well, because we had witnesses from those two providers to come to talk to us. So this is where we'd got our recommendations from, but we didn't have ABRI in those days.
Yeah. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's the same stock, isn't it? So, do we still need this this training, member development training, or are we confident that the current meetings with ABRI are sufficient to replace that training?
Can I come in on that one there? We've only had now, this is only our second meeting with ABRI just recently. I do think it's appropriate that we have not so much training, in knowledge of, like say with ABRI, I've requested, and I'm still waiting, for the properties or the streets. It's not me going knocking on their doors and that, but I would like to know in my ward how many houses are ABRI, which wouldn't be hard for them to give out, and then the address. Because that is knowledge. This is where we should be getting this sort of thing.
So you're in favour of some form of knowledge transfer around how the social and affordable housing works, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Jodie?
Can I dodge in as well? The ABRI meetings are all well and good, but isn't it about time they came to us rather than we export our councillors? Because sometimes it's easier for the councillors to be in the chamber or on a Teams rather than everybody to be exported.
I'll go with that. Yeah,
or to their offices.
Yeah. Let them come to us.
Yeah, happy with that. Jodie?
Yeah. So I think they have a considerable amount of training. I don't think it's not necessarily an issue, but there is this communication that I'm getting, and it is consistent, and we still have a lot of problems with mold and asthma and the health issues around that. And I'm not saying I blame ABRI. Obviously they inherited this stock and it was a problem long before they got here, but how are we monitoring their monitoring and dealing with this? Because every ABRI tenant I mention, you say mold and they go, oh yeah. So yeah, okay. I'd like more reports on that. And they like Dot was saying, they do report, but they really only report the positives. And
can we just get some? So Harry's got something to put in his recommendations. So this is what we're saying is a mechanism to provide management information on the quality of the social and affordable housing stock available to members. That's what we're asking for.
Yeah.
Management information.
I know
listings is a word that should be, because it's all right of giving us or telling us they're going to. We request it
on the management of the social and affordable housing stock.
I think it's a good call that we should know, us councillors should know what we have in our wards. I know I've got Thames Valley. I know I used to have Silver, but is that now ABRI? I don't know.
Hold on a second.
Let
me get this on there. Also, a mechanism to understand social and affordable housing stock in members' wards.
Yeah, that's it. Now, what was I was going to say something?
Names
Because
and
we
numbers,
get
not the names,
we get the
but
residents that
companies.
come to us, Mike, and say the
What was that? Sorry, Tina, what was that
aren't
last
doing
bit?
this for us. So
Oh, yeah,
we've
yeah,
got to
yeah.
make sure that the residents understand that we don't turn up and as I got a call on Boxing Day some years ago, that somebody had rats in their attic. Well, no, the council doesn't do that. You go to your RSL.
Yeah, okay. So that's another point, which is member education on how the system functions, including issues regarding tenants' issues with their housing stock.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
How do we educate our residents for them to go back to their RSLs rather than come, well, it's the council's fault? Well, actually, it's not.
There's a whole load of ways that can be done in terms of responsibilities. There's comms campaigns that can be done by the RSLs. There's what we put on our websites. There's all sorts of ways we could potentially do that, and I think it's really important because the word council housing, we've moved away from that, and for good or for bad, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And if we had this list, that's what I'm asking for, and segregation of who have them, it would assist us as councillors because we could go to it and say, this is who you should be ringing because you are an ABRI and this is your problem. It doesn't, it's like I'm dealing with a parking problem at the moment where ABRI has put a couple in a house very much unsuitable because they're both disabled, but to get their vehicles they have to go over a ridge of greenery, which we are now, I'm dealing with highways, how ABRI should have put them in a place where they'd had a drive-in, and ABRI are now having to fork out and deal with it. But you know, this is where again it would have been nice to have known who the housing was, and because some people don't want to tell you.
I've got to keep going, Doc, because we've got a load.
Sorry,
of
love.
Donna.
Yes, we ought to get home.
Bye. Yeah, so Mary and I had a meeting with Dassos and a couple of ABRI representatives, and we had a garage walkabout. So ABRI have agreed that they're going to put stickers on the garages so that we can identify that they're ABRI ones. If there's a problem with that, then they can be reported in. But obviously, so they can give us lists. They do know what they've got. And I think it would be very beneficial for us to know where we've got.
Knowledge, sorry, one second. That knowledge transfer, Harry. It's engagement with ABRI, ward engagement with ABRI. The mechanism is to do that. That's what that's about. That's an example of engagement with ABRI on a ward issue. So that's what that one is about. So it's what Donna's just described is an ABRI engagement mechanism for a ward. So just to go through.
Donna will admit I've already asked this question of ABRI at the last meeting, and they still haven't come back with it all.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get that one, Harry? How you? Hey, look at me, Harry. I was just checking you hadn't frozen.
No, I'm there. Do you want that as a fresh bullet point, or do you want to add it on to the second bottom one?
I want it as the top one. It's the mechanism to do that on a ward basis. Judy? Oh, sorry, Christoph actually has got his hand up first.
Yeah. I'm pressing my luck with the connection and so on. Sorry. I hope you can hear me. Quick question. Shouldn't we just say the original recommendation is upheld and we want that to be implemented? Because I think we're going into a lot of detail and time is at a premium.
I think it's different, Christoph. I think we've moved on a bit from that. There's an element of two aspects to that. The first one is engagement, which is very similar to the recommendation. I'd agree with you on that. And the second bit is the provision of management information around social and affordable housing, which is slightly different. So I think you're right. Plus, so let's move on from this one because I think there's support in that we need to maintain, like Christoph said, the essence of the recommendation plus some additional MI. So right, okay. Recommendation 2: that the executive establish a quarterly all-member.
It did have something to finish up. I got a little bit
sorry,
interrupted.
Jodie.
Terribly sorry, but I'm sorry, Harry. Could you go back to the page because I can't remember what it said. Okay, so I hate to be a bugbear about it, but anything that we can do to monitor the mold process, the mold situation, I think is really important. It could come under, management of stock, or it could come under member education. Maybe there's a particular email they talk to that, when
Okay, I'll tell you what then.
specifically mold.
Let's put it in bullet 3 brackets, specific emphasis on mold.
Because I was talking to the ICB people the other day, and they have a nurse specifically for mold-induced asthma. That can't be good. Yeah, I'm done. Sorry.
Okay, no, happy with that. Let's get to the next one. Have we had one since? Brian, do you know? Seems a good idea.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't here then. Not since I've been here. PPP is the shared service that's with West Berkshire. It's a different department.
Not
I
to my
don't think
knowledge.
so. No, don't think so. I've been a councillor for all this time. No. Dot, do you agree? We haven't had one.
No, we haven't, because also with the PPP, besides the COVID, West Berkshire, I think, was it not that Wokingham came out around that time as well? So there was confusion of who was parties in there.
Let's do this then. Let's get them to arrange it. That seems a sensible one. So I would say this is ensure a recommendation is enacted.
That is a very good idea. Occasionally, Iskander Councillor Jeffries does do. He touches on PPP during his presentations to the Overall Scrutiny, but he doesn't. They don't do a whole one, though, do they?
Okay, happy with that. That's an easy one. Let's go to the next one, because that is yes, we should do this.
I think we have had one with PPP, but it wasn't to do with housing.
It wasn't. You're correct.
Particularly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was underage crime, shoplifting,
and noise, particularly things like that.
Brian, Ian, are you content that actually what's on the website, it was completed, is up to date and acceptable?
I believe so. I haven't looked for a little while. I can have a look and confirm.
Could you just do a belt and braces for us? I think that's sensible. That this is a very good place for it to be. Any comments on this one? Seems sensible to me.
No, if Brian's going to have an overview on this, that's fantastic.
I'd also need to check with, again, this overlaps with PPP, living standards in rented home. That comes under the Public Protection Partnership. They enforce those standards. So I'll ask my counterpart in PPP to also have a look.
Yeah, we sure know.
You would also bring in the mould.
Yeah. Okay, happy with that. So this is a yes, Harry.
Bring out your mould.
Belt and braces. Sorry, who was that? Oh, Tricia.
So we're marking that as completed.
No, we are. It's completed, but we're doing a check. Brian's doing a check to see if it's up to date and to the standard required.
Good.
Tricia? Yeah, Tricia, you got a question? You're on mute.
Sorry, at this point, I think it's probably appropriate to say, ask if we should be looking at registration of landlords, Bracknell, so that we have some sort of recommendation, especially with private landlords.
So that's out of scope for this panel. When we did the scope, it was focused on effective social affordable housing rather than the landlords per se. So
okay,
we won't be looking at that for this. Next one. No. So this was asking us to provide a link, a digital link with the APs, the RPs rather, So is this for a case management system, or is this for connecting using probably APIs to the RP's platforms? Tina, what do you remember?
No, I don't. Run that past me again. Let me. I'm desperately trying going through my notes here of what we took all those years ago. So I'm not trying desperately. I don't know.
Is it to
No.
digitally connect into the RP so that there's some way of harmonizing the digital landscape? Is that what it is?
I think so. I think so. So the latest the development could support the third-party digital engagement, but we've not had the import. I think we need to update that. I need to follow that through.
Well, I would say, working in this industry, that would be a nightmare. You can have links to their sites, but actually linking platforms will cost a fortune.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, that probably is. It was probably aspirational rather than more than we've got to do it.
It'll be lovely, but I don't think we can.
Shouldn't they provide certain amounts of this?
Yes. Let them provide to us. You're right, Dot. You're right.
Yes.
I think
legally they should be doing that.
I think what I would suggest, wearing my IT hat on here, it's the provision of management information in a format that's suitable for the council. That's probably the best way I would describe this. And in the SLAs that we have with the RPs, there could be a conversation around what that provision of management information is.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
But it's important. Yeah, but it's important we get it over that we require it.
Yeah, but we've got to ensure, and you've said that absolutely right. We've got to get the SLA sorted out.
Yeah. So it's a review of the SLAs, Harry, regarding the provision of management information and its format with the RPs.
Yeah.
Good one.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Put the cost on them. Right.
Exactly that.
So the trouble is, a lot of my stuff has
and
been
review the
archived
SLAs, Harry. Sorry, Tina.
Never
Did you
mind.
get that one? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super.
That. Right. Next one. The executive men of adult services rights to the MHCLG to express strong support for consumer regulatory regime set out in the social housing paper. Oh my God. Events, Du Bois.
So basically, is this still relevant?
So many words.
Yeah.
No, we can't
Is
go.
it something that should be updated and looked at because the time has passed and things have changed, and we do need to legally again bring it into today's alignment.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Let's make that recommendation that the executive member reviews the current legislative landscape regarding social housing residents to ascertain whether the legislation as defined in that white paper 2020 still applies.
Do we want to suggest that they just do this soon, or are we trying to recommend that they do it, once a year or once a quarter?
Well, when we come back to recommendations at the end, we'll put a timeline on it, and so this will be a sooner rather than later, to be blunt.
Can you keep going?
Like yesterday.
Yes. Sorry, Harry. What was that?
Do you mind can you see what I've written on the screen? Do you mind continuing your sentence?
So social housing white paper refer it back to that white paper, which gives it a legislative hook that the executive member can start from.
Legislative landscape around social, and to give it a timeline as well, a deadline, if you like.
If we just put for time at the moment, put it in the short term bucket, and we'll tidy it up when we get to the end and go firm on recommendations. Okay, that makes sense. Check the legislation. Where are we?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Harry,
I do
continue
like
as you
the
do.
law.
Right. Okay, goody. Hope everyone's had a chance to read all of the paperwork. There's quite a bit of it. So I've got some questions. I've gone through it. Do you want to start with housing allocation, Harry? So the first thing is it fit for purpose? Well, we just voted on this, didn't we? It went through oversight scrutiny already. So personally, having looked at it, it feels very thorough,
But
very comprehensive. No, I've got a couple of
but I
questions.
still hear a but, Mike.
No, genuinely, I've got some questions. The debt rule. Brian, can you explain 2.33, the debt rule, to me? Because that, I didn't get that.
Let me just bring it up. Bear with me.
Where's my thing got here?
Oh, sorry, it won't be a second. I just need to bring it up so I can quote the exact one.
The other one was sensitive letting, understanding that, and the relevance of levelling up, bearing in mind the change of central government. That was the other point I found.
Yeah.
2.33. So if I just answer the first one, if you don't mind. Qualification applicants current or former social housing rent arrears or another account. Right. Okay. So we have issues where housing associations will refuse nominations for applicants if they owe the money. So if you've got somebody that is a former ABRI tenant that may have been evicted in the past, ABRI won't let them be rehoused if they've got debt that's outstanding to them. So it's similar for social landlords. We face a lot of, for private landlords, we get a lot of consternation, I suppose would be the way to put it, from landlords said, well, I've got somebody that they owe me thousands of pounds, yet you've rehoused them onto the waiting list. So it's consistent with most other local authorities. If you've got a housing related debt, you need to clear that debt before you can go onto the waiting list. So it's sort of it's encouraging people to be responsible for their managing their affairs and to resolve them. So if they've got rent arrears, I think we've included on there, just to have another look, that they need to be into a management, a payment agreement. Let's have a look. So housing related debts are, so if you've current or former tenant rent arrears, if it's a social housing tenancy, or someone may have rent arrears with the council, so they may have arrears for us in temporary accommodation, or if we've used bed and breakfast at some point. So really, we're just we're following what the associations want us to do, which is to not house people and set them up to fail. So if you've got somebody that's got a history of non-payment of rent, then if once they move into a new property, they're likely again to get into a situation of rent arrears. So we're trying to get people to take more responsibility for their rent.
Okay, thank you. Jodie?
You may have partly answered that, but if we don't house people with debt, won't they end up in the homeless system or the emergency housing system and thus get housing anyway?
Housing related debt. So yes, I do get the point, but what we're trying to do here is we're not looking at debt per se. So this is specific housing related debt. So if you've been evicted for rent arrears, etc., and you've had that, and if you come down the homeless route, it is quite possible that you would be found to be intentionally homeless. There are cases where you could have that intentionality will be discharged because you've lived somewhere else for an appreciable period. And yes, you are right, people can bypass it. There tends to be a few shortcuts or ways through, holes in the system. But as a rule of thumb, we want to try to encourage people not to have those debts or to be addressing those debts.
Sure.
Okay. Is there a particular cut-off point? Like if somebody says, I've got a grand's worth of debt, would we still house them? Or does it have to be zero?
It has to be zero, really. Yeah. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Tina?
Mike, you were talking about leveling up just a minute ago. If you go to page 13 on the agenda, Trish, can you look at this as well? It's quite interesting. I've just lost it again. Here we go. And it says here, the National Policy Framework is to be amended to remove the current requirement for a 5-year supply of housing and land where the local plan is up to date. Now, that was in those days. When was that? That was 22.
Which one
That
was
has
this,
now
Tina?
been updated. That is now updated.
Is it the strategy or the allocations policy, that one?
That is under the levelling up thing, page 13. But that's an interesting part where we now have to have a 5-year housing supply, land and housing supply, which may here goes risk. That may affect us getting the sufficient housing supply.
Page 13.
Yeah.
Just having a look.
And concern with them then shelving and not even when they get the planning permission, we would have problems if we don't look at it, that they don't commit themselves and deal with it as well, Tina, under the planning. So we would never meet the housing supply.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting point like this, I have to say.
Chair, I think page 13 is the housing strategy, which we'll come on to discuss.
Oh, right. Have I jumped the gun?
You've jumped it slightly, yeah.
Sorry.
Not to worry, I did give you the answer.
So, Jenny, you got a question? You're on mute, Jenny.
If I'm going back to what Jodie was talking about, debt, if someone has ended up in the homeless system and has been given, say, a small house or a flat or something, and they really come to the end of the period they should be there, but some of their debt is still there, will they then be accepted back onto the housing list? Or what happens? Because surely we're responsible to house them.
Yeah, so there will be situations where somebody will be in a homeless environment or in temporary accommodation, and they may be in there for a very long time if they maintain those rent arrears or those former rent arrears and they haven't resolved that debt. So that is an issue that we're expecting to pick up. We haven't got an answer to that at the moment. We're sort of dealing with it as we can. So we're anticipating there will be the occasional client where they may have an outstanding debt of, if we just use £1,000 as an example, which is preventing them from being housed on the register. There will be mechanisms which we may wish to apply, which is we may wish to use some of the discretionary grants that we've got available to clear those rent arrears to get them moved on. What we don't want to do is to keep people in temporary accommodation unnecessarily because of a relatively small debt, and to have that property blocked in essence by that household because they're never going to move because they're never going to resolve that debt. So I think we need to be we intend to be quite pragmatic about it.
Right.
Brian, just so clear, this part of the allocations policy, is it working well?
We've only had it for a few weeks, sort of since May, really. So far, we've had a few people that have been close to an offer or would have been close to an offer, but they've had outstanding arrears, and we found that some of those arrears have been cleared quite quickly. The concern is we've got that people will, in that situation, they will be quite desperate, and we don't want to drive people to money lenders. So we're keeping an eye on it so far. It's one of the intention is to review the new policy once we've had it established and have a look to see what the consequences are and to amend it if needs be.
Okay, so the recommendation I think is then for me the policy overall. We've obviously just voted it. It's new. There's a follow up probably. How long is a good enough time? Because it's a comprehensive document and there's a lot of moving parts. How long is it before you can?
We think 12 months. We've planned for 12 months is what the plan has been.
Okay, well, I think we would support that review at 12 months because it's a new policy. Yeah, I'll be particularly interested in how the debt that 233 has worked out, to be blunt. And like everyone else on the call, we don't want to make things worse by recognising that a legacy debt, housing debt, causes more suffering.
It's trying to strike the right balance, Councillor.
Correct. No, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I haven't got anything else on the housing allocations, having read it from all 50 odd pages of it. In fact, hold on. Yeah, 64 pages of that beauty. Very good document, very thorough. Anyone got anything else they want to add on it? I've taken the
So a
pain
fun
to
evening for
routine.
you then, right?
Right, should we go to the next one?
I have nothing else to add.
This is the strategy document. This one's got a picture of young Dale Birch on there, I think, on the 52 pages. Yeah. Now,
Yes,
yeah,
I
there
saw
he is.
that and wondered if I was reading the wrong thing.
Yeah. So 2028. So it's quite it feels a little bit dated in some respects. Relevant references to COVID and so forth, the local plan and so forth. Interesting to know whether the legislation that it refers to, particularly at 3.1, is still relevant, whether it's been superseded or not. So that was a question I had.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so just checking the legislation, Harry, whether that's still relevant, recognising we've had a change of government, whether the implementation of first homes is still relevant. So that with a change of central government, the question I had is, could we do a review just to identify a midterm review to identify is the legislation still relevant and up to date? And the Levelling Up Regeneration Bill 2022 on page 11, is that still relevant, recognising the new government policy?
Relevant and applicable.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done, Doc. Yeah.
I thought it was a good document. It's just whether it's up to date or not. And
Exactly.
it feels
Exactly.
a lot's happened since, and whether 2028
Yeah,
is too
particularly the
far off.
COVID rules. Yeah.
Yeah, for a midterm update. Okay, that's all I had on that. Anyone want to add anything else?
No.
No, I'm good.
I was just looking for what then was the rent for a one bed and rent for a month.
It's about 800, was it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Do you want to jump to the next one, Harry?
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
So the first question I got, and I don't know if it's you, Brian, is in here the rough sleeping, homeless and rough sleeping says there was 2 in November 2021. Do you know what the figures are? Are you the wrong people for this question?
I can tell you exactly. So what is it you'd like to know? So we went out on Tuesday, yesterday, and we didn't find anybody. But that's not to say there was nobody sleeping rough in the borough, but there was nobody that we were able to find when we do our outreach. So the officers are out every single week, at least once a week, to support anyone that's sleeping rough. I can tell you the names of every person that we've known to be sleeping rough in the area over the last few months and the last 6 months or more. So yeah, we've not got a huge problem with rough sleeping. There is a problem with rough sleeping across the country. Anybody sleeping rough is a problem in itself. So we've got an ambition to have 0 rough sleeping. We can achieve it. We know we can achieve it. We believe we can, and we will continue to strive to do so.
Brian, that's sort of good news for Crowthorne. Have we? There's been no
nothing
more
of your
sighting,
friend.
shall we say, from that chap?
Not from him at all. Not heard a word from him. He'll probably pick up again in 6 months or a year or somewhere. His proverbial back penny.
Yeah, I was just thinking about where it's colder towards sort of the end of November-ish.
Yeah, so
it might be worth talking to the welfare team. They know about these people as well.
Well, we know because they just pitch up on our high street and make nuisances of themselves. We found the trouble is with Crowthorne, we've got big hearts, and we were really, really kind towards, and that kindness, unfortunately, was misconstrued, was it not, Brian?
Yeah. Just on the policy. I mean, I'm not being funny, but it sounds like the policy's worked.
It's
is that
working.
fair?
I would say it's working. Yes, absolutely. It's you're never going to completely eradicate the need for people to sleep rough. The aim is to try to ensure that there's support available. So if somebody chooses to sleep rough, because we've had occasions where people don't want, we have people out there at the moment that do not want any support from us and are quite happy to carry on. So there's there's a bit of a debate in government about, or not at the officer level, at civil servant level, as to where do you count people that sleep in rough? Do you have a definition of people sleeping rough voluntarily, sorry, or involuntarily? So where people are choosing to sleep rough, and this is kind of the lifestyle, or whether people are doing so because they simply haven't got any other options.
It's a mental problem.
So
an illness, though.
Yeah. What I would say then is there's a general, can we just do a belt and braces review on the policy to make sure, again, the legislation's correct, and that if we could update any of the infographics as a midterm review, that would be potentially it. But as a policy, I've got to say it's thorough and it seems to have worked. So
can I just say on that actually, as you will see from the dates, it was and is a 5-year strategy.
Yeah.
It is due to be refreshed, therefore, and we've already very recently started the process of doing that, which essentially commences through carrying out a homelessness review. That's the first step.
Yeah.
So that is an analysis of all the tons of data that we have on rough sleeping, homelessness, and so on. And a homelessness review report will be generated as a first step towards then working towards a new strategy. So you will next year you will see that homelessness review.
So it's a positive story, and I'm listening to what you and Brian have just said. It is a positive story, and perhaps there is something here around giving the team that have helped that some form of credit as well.
I think it is a positive story with regard to rough sleepers. I mean, the numbers have gone up a little bit from that figure of 2, but I would say we're very actively managing the issue. We have a very good and comprehensive set of support systems and accommodation available for those who are willing to take up the help that's given. And the numbers of rough sleepers in our borough is far smaller than it is in many parts of the country and in quite a lot of our neighbouring boroughs.
Brilliant. So, well, I think there's a refreshing online going to happen. It's in train. The strategy clearly works, and let's pick up any new themes or legislative requirements in the next refresh, which is started. Right, that seems sensible.
Suggestion: just during the meeting, maybe we could say something like, make it noted that the team's working really well and well done to them.
Yeah, agreed. Recommendation. Well done, team. Yeah.
But sorry,
Right.
Chair, can I just clarify? So this week we've had no one found rough sleeping. That doesn't, just need to clarify that. I don't want to give the wrong impression. So
it's a variable thing. It changes by events. Yeah,
at the count last November, there was 10 people sleeping rough. So it has increased. So that was the official annual count. We have to do an annual count every year. On average, we've had about 6 people a week that we've been working with. Or sort of, it's around 6, sometimes less. This week just happened to be 0.
That's useful. But either way, well done, team.
But it is being managed.
Yes.
Well,
we're doing our best.
What we got next, Harry?
Just questions to officers slide. So anything that's not been picked up.
Thoroughly interrogated. Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay. Unless anyone else got any other questions. Harry, we'll cross deck what we've done so far, so we won't do it now because it's a boring spectator sport. I think there's some really good stuff that we picked up. Brian and Ian, thank you very much for being our first witnesses on this panel. So just to recap, we've looked at, we had an overview on how is module 1 overview. We had a look at how the system works. Brian and Ian gave us a thorough brief on that. We then looked at the previous recommendations and which ones we think are still relevant, and have made comments and recommendations for that. And then we looked at the 3 key policy documents, and we've identified some comments and recommendations on those, recognising that the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy is due for a refresh this year. We will bring this all together as part of our pack as we develop this panel. And the look forward to module 2 is we're going to be speaking to the developers, engaging with them, look at how developers engage with providers to deliver social housing and how they contribute to the provision of that stock in our borough.
May I ask, please, Chair, which developers you'll be interrogating, shall we say?
So 70% of the stock's Adbury. That's the first one. And then if there are, as probably we've got space for 1, maybe 2 others, I'll take advice from the panel on that.
Okay.
Any questions at this point?
No. Just a comment.
Nope.
Thanks for a very, very fluid meeting. It's been absolutely super. Thank you very much.
Just like work,
Thank you.
Tina. Just like
I've
work.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And thanks Brian and Ian as well. I mean, Brian
Yeah,
is an
very
absolute superstar. He really worked so hard for a couple of
Thank
months in Crowthorne. He was absolutely brilliant and was on the phone at stupid o'clock in the morning and stupid o'clock at night to ensure that the homeless person was treated with respect and
Yeah.
properly, but made sure us councillors were kept in the loop the whole time. Fantastic work.
That's
Thank you.
where the PPP, it's important we get that sorted. Yeah.
Right, let's bring the meeting
Right.
to a close. Harry, if you can
Right.
stop recording, that would
Thank you,
be
Harry.
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
And-
much, Harry. And I
Yes,
release
thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Okay.
all
Can